Today we have Sam joining us on the couch, and it's kind of a privilege because I work with Sam. He's a part of our media team, so a lot of the things that you watch is actually created in part by Sam. And I invited him here today because I think you are somebody that's actually very interesting to me because I feel like I hear tidbits of all these things that you do, and I'm like, wow, that's so crazy. I know there's a creative side to you because you're part of our media team, and then one day I find out that you're a drummer on our worship team. And then when we started talking about like creating new wave merch, you're like, oh, I could design a t-shirt. And most recently I heard that you make beats. So I just think, wow, like there's like an endless abyss to what it is that you could create and design. So I wanted to just ask you more about like that creative process for you, and who you are and what you do. But maybe you could start off, like, I know that you said that in your intro that you are a camera software engineer. Tell me a little bit about what you do there, because I think it's interesting how usually when you think of an engineer, you don't think of being creative in all these other aspects. So maybe you could share with us first about what you do.
Okay. Yeah. So, as a camera software engineer, I guess that term's still very broad, but more specifically, like what my team at work does, we'll we'll design like algorithms, such as like auto exposure, auto white balance, to make sure like images you get are have like good colors and are properly like lit. Like maybe like in the automotive space, it's like making sure red lights are red and not like orange or yellow or something.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess these algorithms are in like all of your cameras. It's just I guess one of the underlying processes that happens without most people knowing, but it's there in your everyday.
And so right now, I hear about all these projects that you're doing. What are all the creative projects that you have either embarked on in the past or are doing now?
Like creative projects. I guess I guess to break them into like two categories, like one would be like photography. I think that's like the main thing, I think. And the other is like music. So like drumming is one, and like you mentioned, like make beats for fun. Yeah, so those are kind of the two areas.
The beats that you make, like what kind of beats are you doing? Like just background things? Are you actually putting lyrics to them?
Um, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. Like it's all for fun. So with like beats, it all kind of started with me trying to. This was in college when I got started. So I was actually just like trolling my friend. So like he would like say like certain words and stuff, and like all the time. So I'd like catch on and like imitate him and stuff. But like in college, like I didn't have a drum set to play on or anything. So like I wanted to find a way to still like mess with that. So I asked him to like record his voice just for like really quick, and then like I downloaded some like free like producing software, and then like some like drum samples, and then like put together like a really shabby like beat, but it was really funny. But then like after that, I was thinking like I could actually like make something like not like meme content with this, and like let's just see where it goes. And like it's a way for me to kind of like learn more about music and drumming, so I was like, why not?
And then what have you done like since then with uh, your beats?
um I guess like I have like a private SoundCloud account where I just like upload like some ideas I have. So I guess growing up, I've listened to like a lot of electronic music. So that was kind of like the main inspiration going in. So I think with that, like I feel like the kind of why I've been into like electronic music is because of like the adrenaline it gives, like some in some genres, and like I wanted to kind of recreate some of that energy. So when it came to like making beats, I would actually just like make a really like heavy drop, and then be like, oh crap, like now I have to like make like an intro and all that stuff. So I think all of that has been like quite a journey, and like learning how like dynamics work within a song, and like even things like mixing, like making sure like the whole mix wasn't like too muddy or something. So there's like a lot of learnings from that.
And so right now you said you have a private SoundCloud
Yeah.
account. Is that something just for yourself? Like when you do these things, like say with beats, is that for you or is it also meant to be shared?
I think it's mostly for me. Like I get kind of shy sharing these things, but I think if it's like decent enough, I'll like share it. But I think it's mostly for me to just kind of like be accountable for like my learnings. Yeah.
And then with all the projects that you have, like you go from like just camera work with to like designing things with graphics to designing music. Um, where does that drive come from? Is it and like how do you identify like what is like a new project that you want to embark on? Or I guess like a deeper question is where is that curiosity from?
Okay. Um, I think I guess like a lot of people might think of like the term artist as like someone with like a lot of angst or like feelings they want to convey. I think personally, like that's not really the case for me. Like I think I take more of like a cerebral approach to it. So I think a lot of the process is just like trying to like like in photography, for example, it's like what makes a good image. So then it's just like the journey of like understanding like how color might work or like how framing might work, things like that. So it's kind of just like understanding like the like learning the principles, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Can you?
Yeah, no, I think that's great because I think most people think it's creative, but what I find interesting about what you're saying is you're actually more interested in like the process, the how to, and then
Mhm.
the outlet is a creative like product or thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what are some of like the new projects like or I guess one of my questions I had was, once you like start a project and you feel like you figured it out, does that become something that's kind of like checked off in a box in your mind somewhere tucked away or do you continue to like improve and develop in that area or do you just kind of like are like I just conquered that, I'm going to move on to something else?
Um, I think for now, yeah, like I said before, I kind of just like lump everything into like the photography or like music box. Um, I guess like I do have like some like side projects like you mentioned, kind of like t-shirt or like graphic design. I think that all stems from photography.
Hmm.
So with that, it was just like wanting to be able to, um, because I think with like photography, like most images are consumed like on like your smartphone, like on Instagram or something, and then like never seen again. I think like getting something past that, like on a website or like printed on a canvas or like on a shirt would be pretty cool. And I think that was just one of those things where I wanted to kind of get like a photo on a shirt and just see how that turns out. I think in terms of like doing like shirts, um, it was kind of a phase. It like I think I was curious like um, how photos would like what kind of photos would look good on shirts, and like after like a couple attempts, like I kind of realized like I think what I enjoyed was like having something more like abstract on shirts without like too much detail. Otherwise, it could be like a little distracting, I think. Um, I also messed around with like putting text on shirts and things like that, but um, I don't know. I'm like kind of getting over it now. Um, I think maybe it's just like wanting to like look more mature, and I don't know. I'm just like not really vibing with like graphics right now.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. But they all stem from like your love of either like photo or music, and then just kind of whatever you're trying to explore, experiment with
Yeah.
is like whatever new project that you're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think like I am passionate about these things, but they take so much energy out of me.
Hmm.
So like finding other ways of kind of um, doing creative stuff, but not necessarily in like the typical means is like has been pretty yeah, been pretty nice.
What has been one of the most recent projects that you've worked on that you found was like really interesting, or just something that you want to share about?
Um, Recent project. So this is kind of like an ongoing thing. So I guess I can kind of take a step back with like some photography work.
Hmm.
So I guess I can just talk about like the whole like photography background and how I got started and kind of like where I'm at right now. So I like in high school, I had like my dad's DSLR, and like me and my friends would go just like go on like a mini hike somewhere, just like take some photos for like Facebook or something. Like we weren't like serious about it or anything. It was more just like for fun, like for like hangout like purpose. Um, and like in college, I would kind of like help out at like certain events, just like capture like photos, but nothing like nothing serious. Like I didn't really think too much about it. I did enjoy like taking photos on my phone and like of and just like editing them on like Visco because like I was like a big fan of like all their like presets and I just like I enjoyed like having like a consistent look. Um, but then like after graduation, I got like kind of had like a lot more time to spare, I guess. So I wanted to kind of take this hobby further. So I actually got a film camera and wanted to kind of like learn from the ground up like how like the all these like camera settings work. I did that, and then I realized like how impractical film is, just because like it's like pretty expensive, and like the time it takes just to like develop film and like then scan it is just too much time for me personally. So I got into digital, and I think through like I mentioned earlier, I edited most of my photos on like Visco,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I still love the app, but I think there's not so much like control you have. So that's why I picked up Lightroom, because it does give like a lot more control. And so with that, um, like at first I thought Lightroom was like pretty complicated. I wanted to first like emulate everything I did with like the whole Visco setup, and then once that I got that rolling, like I just wanted to like at first take photos of stuff I can like set as like my phone wallpaper, just something like really aesthetic. So I think from then, like that kind of just like got me into like the whole category of like street photography, which is in other words like candid photography. Um, I think a lot of people might associate street photography with like photos of people like walking like down the street, not knowing they're being like captured on like camera. But it's not really the case. It could also just be like inanimate objects too, like still life almost. So I think that's like what I've really enjoyed like all this time, and I think after like after a while of doing that, like at least 1 or 2 years, like I wanted to kind of take it a little further. So I made a website, because before I was like on Instagram and it just felt like kind of limiting having everything like on a feed, and like you don't really get to organize your work that well. And I felt like making a website was like a really good exercise of like what do you want to like present? How do you want to present your work? And I think I think like curation is also like kind of like an art form in itself and something I wanted to work on as well. So I did that, and I think along the way, um, or going back, I think I was shooting everything kind of like as a standalone photo. Like, oh, I can use this photo as like, oh, like a wallpaper or something. But I never really thought of it as like, oh, if I shoot like a group of images at like a certain time, I can kind of like find some commonality, and then like turn it into like a bigger project where like every photo doesn't have to stand on its own 2 feet kind of. Um, and I think doing that really um, helped me to, I guess, not be so hard on myself too at times where it's like I'm getting nothing I really want. But like actually like all these like little pieces are still like helpful in like the scheme of like a big project. And so um, I guess uh, along the way I got really into the um, the idea of like a zine, as one would call it, or kind of like short for like magazine, but it's like not really a photo book, but like a mini photo book of like, I don't know, like could be like a collection of like 30 photos or something. So I wanted to just do one of those for myself. So I think up till now I've done like two. Like I think like I have like the collection on my website like in digital form.
The zines, do you make from your own images or are they from like clippings?
I make the zines out of my own images,
Hmm.
and they all kind of like have a certain theme. So like the two I've done, the first one is actually called like Imposter. So for that project, I took photos of like just like my surroundings that kind of like reminded me of that like idea. Um, but I wanted to kind of turn it into something more triumphant. So like so this project's like not that long. It's like 12 photos maybe, 10 or 12 photos. But like the first few kind of like are a bit darker. Like there's this feeling of like isolation. And then like later it gets like a lot brighter, more vibrant, and then kind of like celebrating like uniqueness almost instead of like seeing it as like a bad thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the kind of like yeah, the whole like idea behind it. And I think um yeah, being able to do like bigger projects like that has just been really energizing.
I
Yeah.
know you mentioning zines. I think most people don't know what that is, but you took me to a really nostalgic place for me personally because my sister, I would say, is an artist as well. And when she was younger, she used to make zines for me as well. And so I think when you said that, I was like, oh, I totally know what that is. And I think it's really your like as a person, as an artist, like your way of like showing people how you see the world or see a certain topic.
Hmm.
And I think that's like really special and really cool. So
Oh,
I like really loved that.
yeah.
How did you grow up? Like what was like when you grew up? Because it sounds like you are a real artist. You are a creative. Did you grow up in a family that was creative, or were you like immersed in like art class and like the exploration of creative arts as a child?
No, I was like the last thing from artistic as a kid. I was just like very, very like active like kid though. Like I don't, yeah, I wouldn't say like any of like the above was like my hobbies back then. It was just like sports, like swimming and like video games, like growing up, even like up till like high school. Um, I think growing up like in my family, like my parents aren't like artists or anything. Like my dad was like an engineer as well. I think he actually had like a pretty big influence on like my current career.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I really look up to him. I thought like what he did was really cool. He's also actually a like engineer in like the camera like industry. Um, so I think he gave me like a lot of inspiration to actually be an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for like the creative stuff, it kind of just uh, yeah, I really started like um, it started like through like making beats, and then um, that was in college. Um, yeah.
So it kind of started as like a gag thing, and then it really turned into something that you're curious about, and that was like a spark to
Hmm.
the exploration of some of the other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Let's see. For all the creative things that you've like identified already so far, are you somebody that's like self-taught, like you're gonna figure it out yourself, or do you like take classes? Is that like
Um,
a dumb question? Like even when you're talking about film, right, and like going back to the original art form, like did you take a class or did you kind of self like teach yourself?
and it's a pretty good question. I think for like I think my personality, I'm like very like do it yourself. So like I don't know, like I take a lot of pride, I guess, in like being able to figure it out on my own, and I'm like pretty stubborn about it too. So like with film, like I kind of just like watched YouTube and like just tried to do my best to make sure it turned out okay. Like my first roll of shooting film, like when I took it out, I think I actually like exposed like a good like third of the roll. So like that was like completely unusable. So like I think for me like I have to learn things the hard way. But like yeah, I just like go for it, I guess.
And what is the drive behind that? Is it just so that like you could figure it out on your own so you can tell yourself like, hey, I did that for myself or I accomplished that for myself?
Um, I think for me, it's just like I guess like I enjoy problem solving, and I guess like using like creative mediums to do that has just been pretty enjoyable. Yeah.
What is the next thing or what is a current thing that you're like interested in?
Um, I don't think that has really changed at all. I think still like photography and music. Actually, with like beats and everything, last year I kind of took a hiatus from that. Because everything I've been making up to this point has been like electronic and like um, I guess not so much representative of like what I listen to on a daily basis, which has been more like mellowed out. So like making all this like really like adrenaline like junky like stuff has been, I don't know. It just like didn't really click last year. So I really enjoy right now like indie and like R&B and that kind of stuff and like doing all this electronic stuff. It just didn't really, I didn't feel any like inspiration there. So I kind of just looked towards like photography work, like doing more projects. So I think right now I've been kind of like thinking about this like project idea of like kind of like a photo book maybe, kind of documenting like Silicon Valley in a sense, kind of like streets of Silicon Valley, because I think a lot of people have like the conception of this place as like being like very techy, and then I think with that like kind of being in the center, but I think there's like so much, there's a lot of like soul behind like different places in this
Mm-hmm.
area. One example could be like Alviso in like San Jose. It's like very like historic, and there's like a lot of like I guess like older buildings and like cars and stuff, and it's just like a completely different vibe from like what you might see, um, yeah, around here. So I think yeah, in this project I just wanted to kind of show like all sides of like the Bay Area, and yeah.
That's cool. I like that because I think a lot of times, this world changes so fast, our communities change fast. So I think to be able to document certain periods of time, it's
Hmm.
actually really important for like the overall community to like look back on and be like, this is like the identity of like what this neighborhood is like. So
Yeah.
I'm personally really interested in that because I think there's not enough documentation about community
Hmm.
in that way.
Yeah.
Like for example, Silicon Valley used to be orchard field, right? Orchard farm,
I
like
actually had no idea.
for miles, and I would kill to like be able to have a snapshot of what that actually looked like
Hmm.
50 years ago or whatever pre-gentrification of what we see today. So
Yeah.
I think for you to like have an interest in that and showcasing those neighborhoods is really interesting and important for like the future.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because I grew up in like San Diego, and like in that like area of San Diego, everything was like more consistent, like socioeconomically. But I think in the Bay Area now you have like really gentrified places,
Hmm.
and then like you go across the street, it's like the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I just find that so like intriguing, and I
Yeah.
just wanted to kind of capture that.
Yeah, I like that. I'll be looking forward to that project coming to fruition.
Thanks.
But what kind of, as somebody that's a creative, I think you're probably constantly inspired every day or on a very normal cadence. What is that push that turns something from inspiration into like I'm actually going to do this?
Um, I think one of the drive, I guess like during COVID has been like a really good time to kind of like just take a step back. And I think one thing like God's been teaching me is to be more present in my environment. And I think being present is actually like the very key of like why I do all this. Like I think like if I'm not present, like I can't like see like the more like subtle things I want to capture. I might not like kind of slow down and like actually feel inspired by maybe like some like beat I'm listening to. So I feel like kind of just it's this like mindset of being present and also like grateful for your surroundings kind of, um, that has been the driving factor. And like I think with photography, I want to kind of like express this like gratitude of like my environment and like the present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I feel like in photography, like a lot of I think a lot of people tend to kind of like focus on like the highlights in life, but not so much like the slower moments. And I think it's like the slower moments that make up like most of your life. And like those slower moments are beautiful when they might be more like subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what people usually gloss over is actually a beautiful moment,
Mm-hmm.
like in time.
Yeah.
For somebody that like wants to be able to like pursue more of the inner artist within, like what would you say to encourage them to be able to do that? Because
If,
I believe there's an artist in every single
yeah,
person,
I agree as
regardless
well.
if you feel like you're talented or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like me like 5 years ago would have like never thought I would be doing this in my free time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be like absolutely crazy. I think to that is just like if there is even like a spark of something that captures your interest, like take note of it and like explore it. And like there's no real like right or wrong way of doing things. I think like some people can get kind of caught up in like what's like the proper way. I guess like if you're just like interested, just go for it. Like don't worry about that. I think those things can take care of it on its own. Yeah, over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing is, I know that while we were talking like offline, that people around me have told me that you're working on this algorithm project that has to do with a t-shirt. I'd love to hear what that is about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, this one was actually inspired by my fiance. Sh
Congratulations.
Thank you. She works in tech and is like, for her, that's like very much her hobby. And I find that like super inspiring. And I wanted to, I think before meeting her, I've like never really thought of like my own work as like inspiration for like just things I might want to create like outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think she inspired me to kind of like use some of my like imaging knowledge to kind of just like um, I guess create an algorithm to like cartoonify a photo, I guess, and um, as a result, kind of put it like as a canvas or like on a shirt. So yeah, it's not like it was kind of like a one-time thing, and I did like print out as like a canvas for her, and we do have like a matching shirt. I think that's kind of like crossed out and done. I haven't like really looked back on it, but I think like if there's like another idea that comes to mind, I'll kind of like go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you cartoonified an image.
Yeah.
Okay. And put it on, you printed it on canvas,
Hmm.
and that was part of that graphic design thing that you were saying that you just kind of experimented with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think that was kind of like the nail in the coffin for that. I don't know if like I'm gonna do more of that in the near future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like not really feeling it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool to be able to still explore it and say you've done it and just like keep it in, the archives, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think one thing I've learned is like don't think it out too far. Like maybe what you might like in the future might be completely different from like I don't know, like what you're thinking like at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is something, just like explore it as much as you can, and it kind of just like ride with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there one core thing that you feel like you want to be able to express through your art, regardless of what medium that is?
Um, I think it would just be like being present.
Being present.
Yeah. Because I think when you're like the most present, you're like the most alive. Like literally, like you can sense more things and can, I don't know. I feel like just kind of being out of your head is very freeing because like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like personally, like I think I'm kind of like in my head like a lot of the time, and this is one way to kind of get out of that space.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you have a website
Yes.
where you showcase your work. Is that something you could share? Is it public?
Yeah, it's public. It's just my name, Samuel Hung, and then .net.
Okay.
Yeah, the .com was taken already. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing and just kind of giving us insight to what an artisan soul is
Of
like.
course.
And I will personally look forward to your documentation of Silicon Valley and the streets thereof.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's
Yeah.
been so good.